everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing another DC Universe Classics review, and that will be of the Martian Manhunter. Take a look at this green boy right here. A little information about the Martian Manhunter. The Martian Manhunter's real name is John Jones, and as you can see, well, he ain't human. No, John Jones has an interesting backstory in that he actually kind of has two backstories that kind of mix into one. A little confusing, but I'll explain it. John Jones was born on Mars. He is a Martian, and the interesting thing about him is that he's actually a twin. He has a twin brother, and that's very rare on Mars. Rarer than it is on Earth, but anyways, John grows up and he becomes a police officer on Mars, and he has a family, a wife, a daughter. Everything's going good for John Jones. Everything's going good. But his brother, he's a little cuckoo. He's a little crazy. He's just quite out there, you know. He had a little too much death sticks when he was younger. But no, in all honesty, he's quite insane. So the fact that he hates all other Martians. So what does he do? He released a psychological plague on the Martian race, which basically taps into their fears and makes them spontaneously combust. Something along that degrees or along that line. And it affects everyone, with the exception of John Jones, because he's prepared for it and he mentally blocks the virus, the disease from getting into him. So basically what happens is mass genocide. All the Martians are killed except for John Jones, the white Martians, and I think one other green Martian. I forget her name. But anyways, at the same time, a scientist on Earth teleports by accident John Jones to Earth, from Mars to Earth. And John is a complete mess. He's like completely insane, distraught over what happened, and because of which his powers go a little loopy and he has a psychic connection with the Doctor. The Doctor realizes how completely screwed up he is and somehow fabricates a false memories for him so that he can regain his sanity. And he does. And these false memories are actually his Silver Age backstory, in that in the Silver Age, John Jones was teleported by accident and everyone on Mars was still alive. And he never had a daughter or wife. And these are the memories that are given to John. And so he regains his sanity and he becomes a private detective, also named John Jones. But the weird thing is how Martian names are done. They sound like regular human names, only they're spelled differently. So John Jones is the human spelling of it, where John Jones is also the Martian spelling of it. A little confusing, but he becomes a private detective and stays a private detective for a good amount of time, until his identity is eventually killed off due to various reasons. Reed Showcase presents Martian Manhunter Volume 2, you'll see. So he becomes a full-fledged superhero, adopting the persona, the Martian Manhunter. He, along the way, gains many allies, a sidekick named Luke, I believe that's his name, a little orange, little mischievous little guy that shows up only in the Silver Age, and I think once in the modern continuity. And he also becomes a founding member of the Justice League of America, along with the 6 other founding members: Aquaman, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and Flash. And he is basically one of the longest-running Justice League members of all time. Him and Batman, I believe, have ranked up the most amount of hours or days or time as a Justice League member. You know, there's been some Justice League where Wonder Woman isn't a part of, or Superman is not a part of, or, you know, Flash and Green Lantern are dead, or whatever reason. Batman and Martian Manhunter are usually the longest-lasting members of the Justice League. And with the exception of the newer Justice League, Martian Manhunter has been on them all. He's actually been the leader of the Justice League International after Batman leaves the team. And Martian Manhunter, John Jones, he considers the Justice League his new family. Eventually, somewhere down the lines, he regains his previous memories, but it doesn't make him go insane. He also gains the ability to overcome his fear of fire. However, this causes him to mutate into a monstrous beast that needs to be taken down by the Justice League, mainly Plastic Man, because Plastic Man is indestructible. See, the thing is, the interesting thing about Martians' phobias to fire is that they're actually planted in by the Guardians of the Universe. I'll get into that when I go into powers and abilities. But like I said, John stays a consistent member of the Justice League until the Infinite Crisis, where he kind of takes time off. He finds some other green Martians that turn out to be white Martians, but there actually is a real green Martian there. And eventually, Final Crisis happens. He's stabbed in the back by Labra, or I forget how to pronounce their name, but stabbed him back with a flaming spear because they wanted to prove themselves to the Society of Evil, the Legion of Doom, the Injustice League, whatever they call themselves now. You know, they can call themselves the Pandy Skid Marks of America for all I know. The evil version of the Justice League. Prove themselves that he can do anything that the bad guys want him to do for their loyalty. And basically an old enemy called the Human Torch, or the Human Flame, that's his name, who only shows up in the Silver Age, wanted Martian Manhunter dead because he screwed up some of his crimes back in the day. He dies, but don't worry, he only stays dead for about 2 weeks, and then Blackest Night happens. He becomes the Black Lantern, and then at the end he is brought back to life, and now he has a starring role in The Brightest Day. Whew! A lot of information to put in there. Martian Manhunter has quite a bit of a backstory, and for a character that really doesn't have much comics out there for him solely, he has a lot of backstory. You know, there's really only a few trades out there individually for Martian Manhunter, 2 Showcase Presents and then the Others Among Us. But a lot of Martian Manhunter's history is actually cultivated in like team-up books like Justice League, and also big events like Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, Crisis on Infinite Earth, Final Night, etc., etc. But that's a little information about John Jones. I love John Jones. He's a great character. He's just such a fucking badass. Which brings me into how much of a badass he is with his powers and abilities. Powers and abilities. John Jones is, well, I like the terminology that was used on the internet. I'm going to steal this from some source. I forget what it is. I think it might have been the DC Wiki, but it could have been on a message board. But the best way to describe John Jones' powers and ability-wise is that he is the Swiss Army knife of the DC Universe. He can do about anything. He has the best powers in the DC Universe. Better than Superman. Because he has basically all the powers and abilities of Superman. He's super strong, as Superman, super fast, he has near invulnerability, flight, he can use Martian vision, which is very similar to Kryptonian vision, he has super breath, he is also a telepath and psychic, he can go into people's minds, he can talk to them, through their minds, he can rearrange their minds and alter things, he can phase through objects, walk through objects, he can also become invisible, and he can shapeshift and elongate his body parts. So not only can he look like a woman in their mid-30s, human, he can look like a cat. He can have his arms grow out and become big hammers and beat the shit out of people. So as you can see, Martian Manhunter, he has some of the best powers out there. The only problem is he has one weakness, and a pretty common weakness. John is weak to fire. Now, originally the Martian's weakness or phobia of fire comes from the Guardians of the Universe, because the Martian race was actually a terribly powerful race, which were uncontrollable. So to prevent them from becoming too powerful, the Guardians put a little thing in their head which made them scared of fire and vulnerable to fire. Because of this, if it's removed, they become the monsters that they do. Read JLA Trial by Fire, you'll see what I'm talking about. So he's weak to fire, and he also has a phobia to fire. So that's a pretty common thing to be weak against, but you know, a lot of people are weak against fire. I'm weak against fire. Or am I? But those are the basic powers and abilities of John Jones. And as I said before, John Jones is a badass. He's one of my favorite heroes of all time. Definitely in my top 10. I really love him, and the great thing about him is the fact he has so much powers, so much abilities, being quite possibly stronger than Superman could ever imagine. He's not a heavy hitter. He's more of a stay back, you know, think things through. He can be more relatable to maybe Aquaman or Batman in that he's more of a strategic individual. So I like that. He's a kind of a cool, sophisticated powerhouse. But let me just say, he's one of the last people that you want to fight. So with that said, let's talk about the figure itself. Now let me just say up front, Martian Manhunter is one of the 3 figures when the DC Universe Classic line came out that I absolutely wanted. The 3 figures were Martian Manhunter, the classic Dick Grayson Robin, which we are getting in wave 17, I believe, and I would like the purple costume in the 90s that Catwoman had, you know, with her hair out and everything. That's probably pound for pound my favorite Catwoman costume. That hasn't happened yet, and who knows if it does, but, you know, whatever. But I really wanted a John Jones figure, and when I found out they were actually going to release him, I was ecstatic. Not only because I love John Jones, but because I would actually finally have all the original 7 members of the Justice League of America. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and John Jones. Badass. So let's talk about the figure itself. Now, the interesting thing about Martian Manhunter, before I actually get into the actual figure itself, is that he's had quite a few costumes throughout the years. His original costume is very much similar to this. The only difference is that he was a little bit skinnier, and his face was a little bit more human-like. This was more or less the Silver Age Martian Manhunter look. And then he kind of gets this look right here, which is a lot bulkier and a little bit more Martian-like with the, more or less with the forehead, and he has red eyes. This is the look we get in the 70s, 80s, up until today. After the Infinite Crisis, he gets a full Martian black suit with a cape, and he has more of a Martian-like head. And then now he has a costume similar to this, only with pants. Thank God. But, anyways, I'm glad that they went with the traditional Bronze Age, Modern Age Martian Manhunter suit, because it's the most recognizable suit, and it's also my favorite. I love the look that they did with this figure. Now, let me just note that there's two Martian Manhunter figures. There's a variant where he has a more Martian head pointed in the back, and he also has what looks like a blade, a shape-shifted hand that turns into a blade. So there is a variant out there. I haven't got it. I wanted to get the original first. The main colors on Martian Manhunter is green, blue, and red. Green for the body, skin, blue for the boots, the spandex underwear, and the cape, and red for the belt, eyes, harness, and the right here, the rope that holds this cape together. One thing I want to note that I like about this figure is the cape itself. Martian Manhunter doesn't have a generic cape like we see with some of the Batman and Superman capes in the DC Universe Classic line, but they're kind of just straight down. This is kind of flowy, and it looks very Martian Manhunter-esque. I don't know how to describe that, but it just looks good. It's kind of straight down, but it's a little flowy at the end, and it looks Martian Manhunter-esque. The one worry that I had with this figure going into it was the green color being too green, too bright. I kind of wanted more of a darker green, maybe a jade green. But the green actually works out pretty well. I still would have liked it to be a little bit darker, but it's not too lightish that I would have been annoyed by it. And what's good about this figure is there's a little shadowing detail on the boots, and I believe that's the only place we get shadowing detail. There's none on the cape. It's only really the boots. And it's very subtle. You have to kind of look at certain angles. But there is a little shadowing detail on the boots. Articulation-wise, he has all the standard articulation of the DC Universe Classic figures. What we come to expect, the cape doesn't dampen the articulation at all, except for if you're trying to bring the leg back. But as you can see there, you still get the articulation. So on the whole, there's not much to say more about this figure than I am really satisfied with this figure. Putting all biasness I have aside with the Martian Manhunter because I love him so much, it's just a great looking figure. I like how it's bulkier like Hawkman because Martian Manhunter was always bulkier, and just on a whole it looks good. I would have liked a little bit darker skin tone and maybe a little bit more detail because maybe like a shadowing detail of some sort, because Martian Manhunter has a very bland color scheme and just being green and blue, so having a little something to separate the colors would have been nice, or at least something to make the other parts of the body stand out. But for the most part, I'm very satisfied with this figure, and I do recommend it for people to pick up. From this wave that I can think of, him and Sinestro Corps Batman is what I want the most. I see Sinestro Corps Batman at Newbury Comics, but I'm not going to pay $20 for it. I'll search around. But I'm satisfied with this. You can get them on Amazon for like $15. You might have to pay a little extra for shipping, but it's well worth it. Great figure. Definitely recommend it. So with that said, I'm going to end this review here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.